Hello, I'm Paul Mason. I am the Economics Editor of Newsnight on BBC Two. Thanks for inviting me. As a public service journalist, there are limits on what I can say in public, and it's not my job to advocate specific policies. For this reason, I can't be a signatory to anything that Today produces, and I can't endorse the aims and objectives of the body that's called this. So that out of the way, I think I have serious analytical differences with the UK government's road to the G20 Summit plan. And I want to outline what they are, because I think if I am right, then the action that they are about to take will not be the circuit breaker, nor will it lay the basis for a future plan of recovery. That's, I'm afraid, just my version of the analytical truth. The world, I think this week, faces a growing choice between hard and decisive nationalisation of the banking system or a long and very painful recession lasting possibly a decade and being fairly stagnant across the OECD countries. But that's not the biggest choice that we face economically. The biggest choice we face is what kind of capitalism comes out of this on the other side. Now I think the document, the Road to London document, basically tries to cast this debate in the following terms. I'll slightly caricature it, but I think if you've read it, you'll recognise it. Globalisation was pretty good. Protectionism is terrible as an idea. We took our eye off the ball with bank regulation. Let's reform bank regulation and get things back to normal. I think that is a poor way of addressing the current crisis, and this is why. I think the growth model of the last 20 years is what is in crisis. That growth model relied on three things that are no longer sustainable. Financialisation, the financialisation of capitalism, which I know Paolo will talk about. The reliance on uncontrolled market forces to deliver growth. And the replacement of a high wage economy with a lower wage economy and investment-driven growth with debt-driven growth. Now in September, President Sarkozy said, laissez-faire is finished. I find it hard to disagree with that. I'll go further. I think neoliberalism is finished. It's finished as a growth model. It is busted as an ideology, as admitted very eloquently by one of its key proponents, Alan Greenspan, that self-regulation did not work, did not prevent the crisis. And many of the key actors in business, politics, and administration who have been the proponents and advocates of neoliberalism are running out of credibility as people to solve the crisis. If you want to design a new banking system, and that is what we're talking about today, I think you have to begin from this problem and not from the minutiae of financial regulation. You have to be able to, as Keynes did, conceive of a new kind of capitalism. Now the work of the Keynesian economist Hyman Minsky has come back into fashion during this crisis. The credit freeze of August 2007, the meltdown of 2008, followed a path predicted by Minsky and came to be called, because of a paper written by UBS economist George Magnus, the Minsky moment, who asked, is this a Minsky moment? And those who know what is are able to say now with hindsight, yes it was. Minsky's insight was this. He argued, as all Keynesian economists do, that capitalism is inherently unstable. He also said that a financially complex capitalism is even more unstable. That instability is transferred from the GDP chart, which calms down after 1992, when the full policy remedy is applied. The GDP chart calms down, but the financial instability Geiger counter takes off. This was Minsky's insight. You get, he said, a pattern of bubble and collapse. He said possibly increasing in frequency and remotely possibly leading to another 1929, the big one. Now Minsky died, I think, in 1996 and never saw the decade which confirmed his theory. Which was, we had the dot-com bubble, the housing bubble, the emerging market credit bubble, the commodities bubble, and now collapse. I calculate, I think McKinsey Global Institute says there's about 160, 170 trillion worth of financial assets in the world. If the wipeouts of the world stock markets of the last year, combined with the cost of bailouts, are added up, I believe it comes to about 50 trillion. So maybe about a quarter, let's say conservatively, a quarter of the world's financial wealth has been wiped out in a year. That's bigger than 1929. Now, Minsky had a solution, and it's not one that I'm going to try and propose as a policy initiative, but I want to explain it, because I think it does contain some of the bases for a discussion about where we're going. And I think it was very healthy and very welcome that John Porter's said we are engaged in the minutiae of crisis management. Maybe we do need to lift ourselves out. Maybe that's the road to civil society. Minsky's solution was this: socialise the banking system. Create on top of it a mostly private industrial and service economy, regulated in favour of the entrepreneur and against the monopoly. Alter the tax system so that the proceeds of growth go to the bottom part of the population, rather than growth boosting the incomes of the rich and boosting inequality, and leaving the poor reliant on credit. Now, this is a very neat and elegant model, and it is not the Keynesian model. It is not the model of the 1930s to the 1960s. There are advantages to it, there are risks to it. I think the weird thing is that the base layer of it is exactly what Western governments have groped towards during the last 6 months. But they've done it reluctantly, and I would say without commitment, and often without being particularly effective. Look, many people in banking already believe the system will evolve towards a socially owned and socially controlled base layer. Even if you left financial regulation exactly as it is and simply applied it now with the new data we have about crisis, well, 25 sigma events are events that are only supposed to happen once if the universe relives itself 14 times over. But they happened 3 days in a row last October. So if the data risk models cannot basically cope with this new data without predicting an utterly conservative and a risk-averse form of banking anyway.